Do you think Gukuraundi was a genocide?
Of course it was. It was nothing else other than genocide. The 5th Brigade did not direct their efforts at eliminating the few dissidents who were running around Matabeleland. They directed their efforts at the Ndebele people, straight, and there's no doubt about that. The very few dissidents were killed as a result of 5th Brigade activity. And they had enough soldiers. 5th Brigade wasn't necessary to come to Matabeleland. There was one parachute commando, there were other army battalions, there was support unit in Matabeleland enough to contain the dissident problem. The 5th Brigade came with orders and brainwashed into just eliminating the Matabele people.
So, what do you think was the main purpose, or what do you think led to the formation of Gukuraundi?
Mugabe got that idea right very soon after independence. He knew that sooner or later there was going to be trouble in Zimbabwe, and specifically probably he knew it in Matabeleland, and also maybe just to keep himself in power. But it was just mainly to eliminate, as I've said, the Matabele people, to try and cower them into submission, because they were voting for Nkomo and Zapu. And Mugabe just can't understand that. He believes even to this date that he is the savior of Zimbabwe, and everybody should be so grateful to him for the wonderful job that he's done. And that goes back to day one when he became president. The genocide was directed at the people. It wasn't directed at anything else other than keeping Mugabe 100% in power. And 5th Brigade were formed to keep him in power. That's all.
So do you think it was tribal?
Of course it was tribal, yes. It ended up being tribal 100%. He might have tried to say that he was deploying them there because of the dissident problem, but they were not required there because of that. It was a tribal thing entirely.
You met Mugabe on one of the occasions,
yeah,
when you reported to him about Gukuraundi. When you told him, what was his reaction?
I met Mugabe many times. I gave him security briefings at 1 Brigade headquarters in Bulawayo. And whilst I would not, during the briefings, I would not talk directly to him because he had the CIO big shots, Shiri Uru, who's now deceased, would sit next to him. Parent Shiri would be there. Chinenge, as he was back then, the army, the 5th Brigade, the 1 Brigade commander, as a brigadier, he would be there. They would intercede if I was saying things that they didn't want me to talk to Mugabe about. Like, for instance, that the 5th Brigade are going crazy and they are murdering innocent people. Everybody around Mugabe would stop him even having to think about that. They would say, no, there's nothing like that, Chef. This is all propaganda and stuff like that. But Mugabe knew. He knew what was going on. I reported through CIO channels to headquarters in Harare, and headquarters would brief Mugabe. He knew exactly what was going on in Matabeleland and in the Midlands where Gukuraundi were operating.
Maybe briefly take us through your day's work at that particular time. Would you go with these guys? Would you attend to cases? And what was your relationship with the 5th Brigade?
I had a lot of dealings with the 5th Brigade commanders on the ground. I had, at all the small police stations throughout Matabeleland, CIO had a deployment there, and they would report to me daily on what was going on in their areas, whether it was the curfew in the north or curfew in the south, or before or after the curfews. And I attended a lot of the massacres, a lot of the atrocities. I went to Balagwe camp at Kezi, when that place was being used by 5th Brigade. I spent a lot of time in the bush during the genocide. Yeah.
In your book, you said that CIO figures say about 18,000 people were killed. Was it that the official figure that we handed over to CIO officials, or it was your estimates and the right?
We knew more or less how many people were killed. That's probably the closest figure that anybody will ever get to. because I had the guys on the ground throughout the province who reported to me how many people had been killed. Yeah, obviously there were 5th Brigade murders at night time, and people were burnt in huts or put into mass graves that we didn't know about, because my men were not attached to 5th Brigade. They were at the police stations. And my men were even not allowed to move freely through the area where 5th Brigade were operating. But the closest figure that we got to, and that's nobody's going to be closer than that, because we knew what was going on, was 18,000 in total.
Do you think there's anything that you would have done yourself to stop the atrocities?
There's nothing I could have done. Nothing I could have done. As a single person, I tried to give Mugabe the advice that things were going bad and that international press were going to do a lot of shouting about this, but CIO chefs, they just shouted me down about that. That's not your worry, Mr. Woods, they would say to me. This is not your war. Just do your job. Just tell us what's going on. That's all we want to know. It's not up to you to tell us whether we should do it or not. There's nothing I could have done.
If you look at the methods, what kind of methods were they studying? Because people always talk about different methods that they used. As someone who was following what they were doing, what were the methods that they were using to basically kill the people?
5th Brigade would kill anybody, especially men, that they would think would be of military age. But that doesn't mean they didn't kill old men. They killed women, they killed men. A lot of people of the impression that 5th Brigade would go to long lengths to interrogate people and hang them up by their testicles or slowly torture them to death. That didn't happen. That didn't happen so much. They would just brutally beat until the person who's been interrogated would either die or would talk. And after he'd spoken, they would then kill him anyhow. They liked pushing people into huts and setting the huts on fire, getting the locals to dig their own graves, shooting them, putting them in the graves. They used a lot of the mine shafts in the Matabeleland South area, the old gold mines, just to throw live people down or to shoot them and pour them in by the truckload full. And those mine shafts are still there. A lot of them were filled up with ammonium nitrate and hand grenades thrown down to disfigure and blow everybody to pieces. They covered their tracks a lot more in Matabeleland South, 5th Brigade did, than they did in Matabeleland North. I think the notoriety was just so quickly into the international press with Matabeleland North that when they went to the south, they were a lot more circumspect and opened up those big detention centres and places like that to give it some sort of semblance of proper military order, but it was nothing. It was just brutal killing of innocent people.
How would you describe Mugabe's character?
I think he's now reached senility, but back then, and he always was, very intelligent, but also very, very cruel, very evil man. And you mix those two traits, cruelness and intelligence, and that's what you end up with. He's paranoid about maintaining power and being the father figure of Zimbabwe and the liberator of Africa. But he's obviously fabulously rich. He was rich back in those days. He cannot stand anybody who betrays him. That's why he left me in jail for such a long time. And at one stage he wanted very dearly to hang me. Unfortunately, there were a few white judges on the Supreme Court bench in those days. If it had been Chuja Siku back then, I would have been hanged, for sure. But he's pathological about loyalty to himself. And that's how he maintains his position, because everybody that is supposedly loyal to him is fabulously rich, and they don't want to get off the gravy train, so they will continue with their so-called loyalty to him. But it's just the gravy train that they're on, and his system of patronage that he runs. That's how he stays in power.
Do you think Nkomo ever, do you think Nkomo ever had a chance to rule Zimbabwe?
Right in the very beginning, at independence, that was his only chance. After that he was persecuted and he had to take cover. He had to run away to Botswana, as you know. He never had, even when he was vice president, he had no power. Never had any power. and Mugabe stripped him of everything. It was only right in the beginning that he could have, if the elections had been anywhere near free and fair, Mugabe wouldn't have won as much as he did through his intimidation. That's all he won in that first election.
Do you think at one point ZANU-PF was saying Mugabe wanted to assassinate him?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, can you maybe briefly tell us about that?
Not once, many times. That's why he ran away to Botswana, because he got the message that he was going to be assassinated. 5th Brigade during the Matabeleland North curfew went to his house in Pelindaba to assassinate him. He wasn't there, so they shot, I think it was 2 people on the street, and his bodyguards and his driver. But yeah, for sure. He was definitely on the hit list. Number 1, Mugabe even said it, cut the head off the snake, because he called him a snake. We have to cut the head off the snake. And 5th Brigade, you didn't play. They didn't play.
You used to go to these joint operation command meetings.
Every single morning.
Yeah, and you sit there. What was the discussion? I mean, what were the people talking about?
Well, that was in the Jock in Bulawayo. So obviously in those days it was, the discussions were, every morning there was a situation brief which I had to give on what had happened the day before, with the dissidents and that kind of stuff. I was not allowed to brief that 5th Brigade have just killed so many people at such and such a place. That was not part of the briefings. That was not part of the discussion. But that would be discussed in our own CIO briefings, which was separate from the Jock, but that was it. It was the war. They called it a war in Matabeleland. That was what was being discussed, and who was being deployed where, which area was frozen, because the 5th Brigade operated in frozen areas. There was no movement, not even normal military. They were not allowed to enter the areas where 5th Brigade were operating, because they didn't want everybody to see what they were up to. CIO even, we couldn't move freely. We had to report to the 5th Brigade commanders on the ground. And, of course they would let us drive around, because they thought that we were all loyal and working with them. They didn't know that, obviously, that I was a spy.
So, at that particular time, did you have a feeling that the whole ZANU-PF machinery was behind Gukuraundi?
I don't think all of the ZANU-PF hierarchy approved of what was going on. People like Sankala, he knew. Monangagwa, Shiri Huru, all of them, they knew exactly what was going on. And of course it was all their careers and their enrichment which was the main goal. So they of course supported it. And they supported it, and they patted the 5th Brigade commanders on the back. But I don't think a lot of the general ZANU followers and also the cabinet ministers that all approved of it. Now, people in Mashonaland didn't even know too much about what was going on in Matabeleland. I speak to people these days who were living in Harare back in those days. They didn't even care. They didn't even know. They used to go to Kariba and go fishing and not even know that this genocide was going on in Matabeleland. It was just something that they heard was taking place there. They didn't worry too much. And especially, in Africa, black people killing black people doesn't make the news. You saw what happened in Rwanda. You saw what happened in the Congo. Black people kill black people. The world doesn't care. That's what's sad.
Yeah. So why do you think Britain and the other Western powers were quiet at that particular time?
Well, Britain didn't want to be made to look stupid, because they had given Mugabe, Lord Soames had given Mugabe the election, and they didn't want to look a bunch of fools, because now they've created another dictator. So they thought, well, it's just blacks killing blacks, so we just won't worry too much about it. Mugabe's not doing such a bad job other than that, so well, let's just leave it, And only when the white farmers started getting killed, that's when they started voicing their disapproval. This is not so good, because 5th Brigade also killed some of the white farmers.
There was the issue of dissidents, and I talked to one dissident, former dissident, by the name Tambo Nyoba, and he claimed there were 3 types of dissidents. Them who were from Zipra, Super Zap, and then he claimed 5th Brigade also operated as dissidents at one point. Would you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. That's very true. It wasn't only 5th Brigade. CIO also had some of their own people who operated as dissidents, as pseudo-dissidents, but they were just there to eliminate their own Matabele targets for personal reasons or for tribal reasons. The Super Zapu, as we know, were deployed from South Africa, and the South Africans lost control quite often of them because they would get on the ground and would act as proper normal dissidents and end up killing whoever was asked to be killed by the tribal leaders in Matabeleland. They had their own personal little scores to settle, and they would use the Super Zapu guys. And I would know if they were Super Zapu by the cartridge cases left from their murders, which were cartridge cases issued from here in South Africa, which were different to the ones that the dissidents had, because the Zipra dissidents had ammunition and guns and stuff like that left over from the war, so their cartridge cases were old, whereas the South Africans ones were new. So there were three groups, yeah, certainly there were.
Being a CIO operative in Bulawayo at that time, so did you at one point approve an operation of CIOs working as dissidents?
No. That was run out of Gwanda, and I found out about it through CIO work and through recovering ballistics and stuff like that from murders that were happening in Matabeleland North when the curfew was already finished in Matabeleland North. This is people coming from Gwanda, where they made up their pseudo teams to murder people in Matabeleland North. I established that with the help of my CIO teams on the ground, but no, there was no need to do that. You know, I was not there just to go around bloodthirstily and authorize everybody to go around and murder people. My job was intelligence gathering and reporting on the intelligence world to the military people who were supposed to implement use that intelligence with the objective of eliminating the dissidents, not running around just murdering innocent people.
So why do you think the CIO, I mean, what were the targets? Who were the targets of the CIO dissidents?
As I said, they would have had orders probably from Zanu hierarchy. This guy's a thorn in the flesh, that one is talking too much, that teacher over there he doesn't support us, that kind of stuff.
You mentioned one thing of the teacher. The teachers mostly were killed during Gukuraundi by the soldiers, yet they were civil servants, and the soldiers were going around saying we are protecting you from the distance. So why do you think teachers were like received, were on the wrong end or got killed during this time?
They wanted to destroy the whole Matabele tribe. So first of all, if you get rid of all the teachers, then the children are going to stay uneducated. They're going to battle to get a decent education if the teachers are not there, and the teachers would pack up and all go back to town. Most of the schools were also closed during Gukuraundi. During the curfews, the schools were closed. So they were obviously targeted for that reason. And also teachers being liberal thinkers, they also didn't just toe the party line.
That's right.